In October 1951, a new sensation debuted at the Paris Auto Show. Type 300S, without a doubt, one of the most attractive cars of its epoch. It was positioned as a prestigious car with a sporty flair, which could satisfy the highest demands in road holding and speed. This was echoed in reviews by the international trade press, which celebrated the new model as vehicle for the world's elite and benchmark for what is obtainable in today's car production. Technically, the 300S was mostly based on the Adenauer Mercedes. The wheelbase was shortened by 150 millimeters, while the engine performance was heightened. With an output of 150 horsepower, the 300S sped up to 175 kilometers per hour, even leaving a Porsche effortlessly behind. The 300S was offered as Cabriolet A, Roadster, or Coupe. A total of 560 units had been built before a customized version entered the market in 1955. The most profound changes were with the rear axle and engine. The internally called 300SC was provided with a single joint swing axle that had a lower pivotal point. The fuel mixture was not aspirated by 3 carburetors, but with direct fuel injection. With the parallel increase of compression, the engine's output was raised to 175 horsepower. A prestigious chrome label alluding to it read Einspritzmotor and could be found under the trunk handle at the back. In spite of technical and visual improvements of all 3 types of the 300SC, only a total amount of 200 units were produced. No wonder, since the 300SL Roadster, which was available from 1957 on, was 4,000 marks cheaper, despite its modern design and advanced driving performance. Nevertheless, both versions of the 188 range are counted among the most exclusive post-war Mercedes-Benz passenger cars and are today sought-after collector's cars. In September 1953, Mercedes-Benz presented its first passenger car with a body in ponton style. Type 180 had fully integrated fenders and a rectangular outline, a design that considerably reduced air resistance and the sound of wind, and at the same time allowed a more spacious interior. Another novelty was the integral body, which for the first time was designed to be welded to the chassis. In January 1954, the 120 series was supplemented with model 180D, almost identical to its gasoline-powered sister model. Both types benefited from September 1955 on from the new single-joint swing axle, which was introduced in Type 220A 1.5 years previously. In March 1956, a third model joined the 4-cylinder range. Type 190 was characterized by an engine that could hit 75 horsepower. Although it originated from the 190 SL, it was considerably tamer. The brakes were adapted and equipped with ribbed turbo-cooled brake drums. With the motto, more precious but not more expensive, the modified Type 180A followed in the summer of 1957, now also equipped with a 1.9-liter engine. About a year later, a second diesel model, the 190D with an output of 50 horsepower, joined it and became an immediate sales hit. The modernized versions 180B, 180DB, 190B, and 190DB from 1959 were memorable for their radiator grills and bulky bumpers. The Ponton 4-cylinders received its final makeover in August 1961. The drive of the 180C was slightly modified, while the 180DC was equipped with a completely new engine. Mercedes-Benz Ponton era ended in autumn 1962. In 9 years, a total of 442,963 units of the four-cylinder range had been built. While the four-cylinder ponton types were positioned in the mid-range, Type 220A, which was introduced in March 1954, clearly targeted the upper class. The six-cylinder type was given the self-supporting body and ponton shape, and at a quick glance could hardly be differentiated from its little brothers. However, the wheelbase of the 220A was greater by 170 millimeters, allowing for extra legroom in the back. The hood on both sides of the radiator grille was almost flush with the bumper. Air vents were positioned behind the series-produced fog lamps, and the front indicators were set in chrome cases mounted on the very front of the fender. The six-cylinder engine of the 220A descended from its predecessor of the 187 range, but it was modified in certain ways, which was noticeable with its 85 horsepower output. In March 1956, Types 219 and 220S were launched as successors of the first six-cylinder model with a ponton body. The performance of the 200S was raised to 100 horsepower by two tow-phase carburetors. Model 219, on the other hand, internally called W105, was to some degree a hybrid. Derived from models 190 and 220, it was supposed to target new customers as a budget-priced basic model. About 2 years later, another new six-cylinder model was released, the 220 SE. The model, internally known as W128, mostly resembled the 220S, but was additionally supplied with a fuel-injected engine and raised the output to a stunning 115 horsepower. With its higher price and a limited total production volume of 1,974, it was the most exclusive model of the range. In August 1959, the Types 219, 220S, and 220SE were succeeded by the new Fintail model range 111. In 5 years of production time, 111,035 six-cylinder saloons with ponton body came into being. From a technical point of view, all Mercedes saloons since then have a ponton-shaped body. Nevertheless, the name Ponton Mercedes is reserved for the original model generation. It was to become the legendary gullwing in the history of the automobile. The 300 SL Coupe, the first post-war thoroughbred Mercedes-Benz sports car. Conceptually, this dream vehicle with the dream price of 29,900 marks, which was internally called W198, was based on the racing model 300 SL, which celebrated triumphant victories throughout 1952. The American importer Max Hoffman was foremost in pushing development of a serialized version. The result was presented in February 1954 at the International Motor Sports Show in New York. The most striking feature it shared with the 52 model was the famous wing doors, hence the English name gullwing. Although an obvious eye-catcher even today, this unusual solution stemmed only from a small engineering snag. The tubular frame borrowed from the SL Racer could not bear conventional doors. Further innovations were hidden under the streamlined body. For the first time in a serialized car, direct fuel injection was integrated. This 215 horsepower engine had to be tilted to allow for a flattened front end. The consistent lightweight construction resulted in spectacular performances, hitting top speeds between 235 and 260 kilometers per hour. May 1957 saw the last of the 1,400 Gullwing Coupe units go forth from the Sindelfingen line. Its successor was introduced later the same year at the Auto Show in Geneva. Once again, Max Hoffmann's tireless campaigning pushed the 300 SL Roadster's development as he foresaw great sales opportunities for an open top on the U.S. market. Technically, the Roadster largely reflected its predecessor, but this modified frame allowed conventional doors. The rear suspension arms were substantially improved by lowering the axle's central pivot point, like the 220A. From October 1958 on, a detachable coupe roof was available as an extra for the price of 1,500 marks. The 300 SL Roadster 1961 was endowed with Dunlop disc brakes on all wheels. In 1962, a modified engine with a light metal block rounded the makeover off. Production in Sindelfingen ceased on February 8, 1963. This date marked the end of an epoch for Daimler-Benz. With the 300 SL, the last passenger car with a detached frame disappeared from the program. Roadsters like the Gullwing Coupe were collector's items from the start and have retained their allure to the present day. For many years, they have been amongst the most sought-after classics. Mercedes-Benz started developing a new sports car based on the Type 180 range in 1953. Unlike the famous Gullwing Coupe, the 190 SL Roadster, internally W121, was not a thoroughbred sports car, but a graceful, sportive, and above all, travel-suitable two-seater. The body style was strongly reminiscent of its big brother, the 300 SL. And the floor plan was a shortened version of the Mercedes 180. Its dependable road holding, praised by the trade press, was on account of the coil spring-equipped single-joint swing axles and their low pivotal point. The 190 SL was powered by a newly developed four-cylinder engine with an overhead camshaft, boosting 105 horsepower. Incidentally, this became the ancestor of a whole family of engines and accelerated the Roadster to a top speed of over 170 kilometers per hour. It cost the then enormous sum of 16,000 marks. The international unveiling of the 190 SL, together with the 300 SL, was held in February 1954 at the Motor Sports Show in New York. Substantially improved, the 190 SL entered series production in May 1955. It was available in 3 different variations: as a roadster with convertible top, but without coupe top, and as coupe with detachable hardtop, optional with or without convertible top. A total of 25,881 units were produced in the Sindelfingen plant by 1963, the majority of which went to the U.S. market.
Geheimnisse in Untertürkheim. Neuer Typ bei Daimler-Benz. Kein Zweifel, ein neuer Mercedes.
At the Frankfurt Auto Show in 1961, Mercedes-Benz presented the 4-cylinder types 190C and 190DC of the new 110 series, just like the larger 6 cylinders with fin-tail body. The three-box bodywork culminated in the new Fintail four-cylinder models. For the first time in the company's history, mid and upper range not only incorporated the same engines and components, but they also displayed an almost identical body. Thus, passengers in mid-range models could also enjoy a spacious interior. Despite the standardized body, the new four-cylinder types could be distinguished from the six-cylinders with a glance to the front. The 190s had round headlights and were clearly shorter. A new and stronger diesel engine in the 190 DC generated 55 horsepower. In August 1965, improved versions of the four-cylinder models entered the market, with the new designations 200 and 200D. The last Fintail models left the assembly line in February 1968. A total volume of 622,453 sedans and 5,859 chassis with partial bodies came from the Sindelfingen plant. The new six-cylinder, a class of its own. This model launched 3 freshly designed six-cylinders in August 1959. Apart from single accessories, the types 220B, 220SB, and 220SEB only differed in terms of engine specifications. The series, internally W111, set a benchmark concerning passive safety. For the first time, a safety cage with deformation zones in front and rear was incorporated into a passenger car. In the interior, safety was the primary aim in providing a padded dashboard with lowered switches and a steering wheel with padded horn ring. The engine range was carried over from 4Runner models with slight modifications, so that the 220B now had an output of 95 horsepower, while the 220SEB even boasted 120 horsepower. A new upper range model was introduced in September 1961. The Type 300 SE exhibited numerous technical innovations, such as a 4-gear automatic transmission, newly developed servo steering, and for the first time in a Mercedes-Benz, air suspension. In 1963, the subsequent 300 SE had its wheelbase extended by 100 millimeters, and an electrically operated partition could be installed upon special request. Assembly of the 2.2 and 3-liter Fintails ceased in the summer of 1965, when the 200B was replaced by Type 230S, which was supplied with a hydropneumatic compensator spring at the rear axle. In addition, the engine was modified. Although the 230S started out with the character of an obsolescent model, 41,107 units were produced up until January 1968. A total of 344,751 sedans and chassis of the ranges 111 and 112 left the Sindelfingen plant. The new sports car 230 SL, which Mercedes-Benz premiered in 1963, was to replace 2 former models at once, the 190 SL and the 300 SL. Therefore, the 230 SL was neither an uncompromisingly hard roadster nor a gentle boulevard sports car, but a 2-seater both sleek and travel-suited, combining high comfort with maximum safety. However, this sports car, internally W113, was not an entirely new design. In engineering terms, it closely resembled the 220 SE, to which it also owed its 2.2-liter engine. Its output could be raised to 150 horsepower, and for the first time in an SL model, a 4-gear automatic transmission was optional. The 230 SL was the first sports car in the world to incorporate a safety cage with front and rear crumble zones. A characterizing feature was the removable coupe hardtop, which on the new Roadster was concave and slightly dipped in the center. In those days, an unfamiliar Vanguard design which did not receive undivided approval. It was not just a self-serving gimmick though, but highly stabilized, a lightweight construction. Like its predecessor, the 230 SL was available in three options: Roadster with convertible top, Coupe with removable hardtop, and Coupe with both hard and Roadster convertible top. In 1967, the 250 SL replaced the 230 SL, which had been produced for 4 years. Motor and brakes were derived from the 250 SE and slightly modified for use in the Roadster. A year later, the SL was supplied with a new 2.8-liter engine that mobilized 170 horsepower. Apart from the type sign, the new 280 SL differed from its predecessors only by the modified ornamental wheel cap. Production finally ceased in March 1971. All three SL types of the 113 range had a joint production total of 48,912. Alluding to their distinctive hardtop, they are commonly called Pagoda SL today. Revealed to the public in 1963, Type 600 had a spectacular debut. Internally W100, it was designed for prestige and entered production as the new top model with numerous technical innovations. For instance, a V8 fuel injection engine. With a 6.3-liter cubic capacity, it boasted a maximum output of 250 horsepower and 500 Newton torque threshold. With its serialized automatic transmission, the 600, which weighed almost 2.5 tons, easily achieved the performance of a sports car. The luxury car's top speed was over 205 kilometers per hour, going from 0 to 100 in 10 seconds. The greatest possible safety was provided by shock absorbers that could be adjusted while driving, and a dual circular brake system engaged by air pressure. Along with central locking, the abundant standard equipment included electronic heating and cooling systems. Unique for their time, the hydraulic seats were adjustable and doors could be opened and closed automatically, of course. Apart from the 5 to 6 seat sedan, 3 Pullman variations with longer wheelbases were available. A 4-door sedan with a vis-a-vis seating arrangement in the rear. A 6-door sedan with bench seat and additional folding seats facing the front, plus a Pullman landaulet. This most exclusive variant could not be found in any price list. Only on request, it was offered reinforced armor for special protection. The well-heeled customer could choose from wide varieties of interior design, finishes, and accessories, so that no car had its equal. The last of a total of 2,677 customized orders was produced in June 1981. In the upper range, the Types 250S, 250 SE, and 300 SE started the succession of these 6-cylinder fintails in 1965. The elegant outline of the body, first sketched by Paul Brack, is of a timeless grace. Starting in March 1966, the 300 SEL supplemented the range. In contrast to its origin, the wheelbase is 100 millimeters longer, which benefited the footwell in the rear. Just like its fin-tail predecessor with the same designation, the 300 SEL was manufactured with pneumatic shock absorption. Internally, the types with conventional suspension were subsumed under Series W108, while the air-suspended 300 SEL was assigned to an independent series called W109. In the beginning of 1968, the 250 SE and 300 SE were terminated. Launched in their stead, the 280S and 280 SE wore a new look and had more powerful engines. The new frontrunner in March 1968 was the 300 SEL 6.3. With a V8 engine and the automatic transmission of a 600, it was endowed with the performance potential of a high-quality sports car. The 6.3 was only distinguishable from the outside by its wider tires and halogen double headlights with auxiliary brights. The 300 SEL 6.3 found its customers and was built 6,526 times, although it cost over 10,000 marks more than the 280 SE. The climax of the range followed in autumn of 1969 with the 300 SEL 3.5 that had an output of 200 horsepower, generated by a newly constructed 3.5-liter V8 engine. Production of ranges W108 and 109 ceased in September of 1972 after achieving a joint total of 330,000 units. Successors were the models of range 116, designated S-Class. France, 1894. The first automobile race between Paris and Rouen marked the beginning of motorsport. Out of 102 registered vehicles, 21 actually started, and only 15 reached the destination after 126 kilometers. And of these, 9 were propelled by Daimler engines. A few years later, a genuine sports car replaced the previous carriage-type vehicles. It was ordered by Emil Jelinek, who named it after his daughter. The Mercedes 35 horsepower was almost a third lighter than its predecessor, and with a top speed of 86 kilometers per hour, a real high-performance automobile. In March 1901, the Mercedes 35 horsepower dominated the Nice Speed Week, the legendary automobile race in the south of France. The victories of this first Mercedes were so impressive that Paul Meillan, Secretary General of the French Automobile Club, enthusiastically wrote, "We have entered the era Mercedes." Major victories for the star were scored by Christian Lautenschlager, a former mechanic of the Daimler Motorengesellschaft. At the French Grand Prix in 1908, he won in a Mercedes 140 HP with a spectacular speed of 111 kilometers per hour. The story of success was continued in the New World. In 1910, 2 Benz 150 horsepower vehicles stole the first 2 places in Savannah. And while war was being waged in Europe, the American Ralph de Palma clinched a victory at the Indianapolis 500-mile race. He crossed the finish with his Mercedes 115 HP Grand Prix in record time, at an average speed of almost 145 kilometers per hour. In 1932, the International Motor Racing Authority prescribed a new formula, limiting the weight of a vehicle without driver to 750 kilograms. In spite of the tight times, Daimler-Benz developed vehicles to meet the specifications. After a 9-year break, the first new Grand Prix racing car was finally produced, internally designated W25. The 8-cylinder engine pushed 354 horsepower. Another novelty was the independent suspension. In June 1934, a day before the race, the W25 was officially weighed in at 1 kilogram above the limit. An old idiom using the word lacquered to mean swindled gave the racing manager Alfred Neubauer an idea. Overnight, he had the white paint coat scraped off, and the W25 reappeared in naked aluminum. Thus, the regulation weight was reached. The first entry of the W25 in the International Eiffel race was a resounding success. Manfred von Brauchitsch not only won the race, but set a new record. The name of the unbeatable Silver Arrow, coined by the press, caught on fast, prompting Daimler-Benz to keep the color for its racing cars. The 1931 season brought 4 further victories for the Star and ended with a duel between Mercedes-Benz and Auto Union, which lasted into the following year. 1935 was an extraordinarily successful year. Mercedes swept up victories in 9 out of 10 races, including 5 1-2 finishes. Rudolf Caracciola, who in 1926 had won the German Grand Prix under extremely difficult weather conditions, celebrated his spectacular comeback. Of the 9 victories of the season, he clinched 6. In the same year, he became European champion and was celebrated as a major star. In 1936, a string of bad luck hit the Star. Auto Union's 16-cylinder race car, designed by Ferdinand Porsche, was dominating all the races. The Daimler-Benz company's reaction was to set up an independent racing department, headed by a young engineer and gifted test driver, Rudolf Uhlenhaut. After thoroughly testing the W25, he developed the new W125, which made an impressive comeback in 1937, stealing victory after victory. The unforgettable climax was the Aarhus race, which was the fastest race in its time, with top speeds of up to 380 kilometers per hour. The average speed of 260 kilometers per hour was only surpassed in 1959. The ever-increasing speed under the 750-kilogram limit was finally considered too dangerous. In 1938, a new formula was introduced, limiting the cubic capacity to 3 liters. In the same year, Rudolf Caracciola took the European Championship again with the W154, followed by the German road race. Next year in the Tripoli Grand Prix, only 1.5-liter racing cars were allowed to enter. This was a strategy of the organizers in order to enhance the chances of the newly tested 1.5-liter Italian racing car against the intimidating predominance of the German racing cars. Daimler-Benz discreetly developed the W165 in only 8 months. After a single trial journey a few days prior to the race, 2 W165 models started against a majority of 28 Italian and English racing cars and scored an awesome double victory. Hermann Lang came in first with an average speed of 197.8 kilometers per hour, and Rudolf Caracciola in second. Mercedes-Benz successfully re-entered the racing world 7 years after World War II. The 1952 racing season revolved around the 300 SL Sports racing car. With the legendary Gullwing, Hermann Lang and Karl Kling clinched victories at the Grand Prix in Bern, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the Nürburgring Anniversary Prize, and the third Carrera Panamericana in Mexico. The comeback in the Formula One in summer 1954 could not have been better timed. It was the big anniversary year for motorsport. For the first time, the W196 Formula racing car was entered into the French Grand Prix. With this car, Juan Manuel Fangio drove to victory, exactly 40 years after the memorable triple triumph of the Mercedes vehicles and parallel with the victory of the Football World Championship. Second came Karl Kling, a tremendous start of the season. Another memorable event for Mercedes-Benz was the Avus race. Karl Kling won with an average speed of 213.5 kilometers per hour, followed by Juan Manuel Fangio and Hans Hermann taking second to third. Fangio rounded off an exceptionally successful season with the World Championship title. Especially for Stirling Moss, a new member in the Mercedes racing team, the star determined the 1955 season. It started with the Grand Prix of Argentina. W196 was entered with an improved chassis, new wheels, and enhanced engine performance. The conditions were extreme. On account of the sweltering heat, drivers fainted one after the other. Only Fangio held out, and after 3 hours, crossed the line as the winner. Stirling Moss gained his first victory in his home country at the Grand Prix of Great Britain. Juan Manuel Fangio ended this year also with the World Championship, Stirling Moss as runner-up. 1955, a new racing car replaced the Gullwing. The 300 SLR, internally dubbed W196S. In it, Stirling Moss not only won the Tourist Trophy and Targa Florio, but celebrated one of his biggest triumphs, the legendary Mille Miglia, 1,000 miles in an awe-inspiring 10 hours, 7 minutes, and 48 seconds, a record unsurpassed to this day. Despite the thriving season, a decision to withdraw from racing was made, just when a serious accident occurred in Le Mans. Still, the racing season of 1955 ended victoriously. Apart from the Formula One World Championship, Mercedes-Benz was awarded the Brand Prize in the German Touring Competition and the European Touring Car title. A further milestone in Mercedes-Benz motorsport history is without a doubt the racing series of Group C, reviving the tradition of sports car racing since 1982. Peter Zauber, a Swiss race car engineer, was one of the pioneers. His quest for a stronger engine led him to the Daimler-Benz company in 1985, where he was welcomed, and from then on, a racing engine based on the series motor M117 was hidden in the back of every Zauber C8. At the first trial, it boosted output to 700 horsepower. The return of the silver arrows in 1989 revived the traditional silver varnish look of the famed 1930s Mercedes-Benz racers. Now the recently conceived M119HL, a VH 4-valve engine, rocketed its power up to 925 horsepower. During its 2-year lifetime, the powerhouse engine won 16 out of 18 races, including the 1989 and 90 Sports Car World Championship with the team Zauber Mercedes. In 1991, the rules for Group C were changed. Turbocharged engines were not accepted anymore. The cubic capacity was limited to 3.5 liters and the dry weight to 750 kilograms. Supported by Mercedes-Benz, Sauber developed the 12-cylinder racing car C291. But the World Championship went to Jaguar in this year. Only in the last race of the season, the team of Michael Schumacher and Karl Wendlinger won in a C291. The successor C292 was already waiting in the wings when on November 26, 1991, the Daimler-Benz board decided to withdraw from Group C.